Okay, so we're starting our third book here. So if we look at our book here, it is budgeting, and we're going to start by talking about income. Yay! Money in our bank accounts, right? Now, income is the amount of money earned. There's two types of income that can be earned. You can have regular income, which is a fixed amount of money received at regular times, so things like wages, salaries, interest from savings account. Or you can have variable income, where the amount of money received changes over time, or it's not received at regular times. So things like commissions or tips or contract work. It's sporadic. You can earn income as an hourly rate, as overtime pay. Overtime is when you worked more than a certain amount of time. Then you might get a higher rate for any hours above that time. Tips are at the discretion of the customer, and it's usually a percentage. You could get tips, and you can get commission. And commission is usually when you're a salesperson and you get a percentage of the amount of sales you get as part of your salary. So it encourages you as a salesperson to sell more. Now, your gross pay is all of the money that you're paid before taxes. So it's regular pay plus overtime pay plus your tips, all added up before deductions come off of it. Okay? Now, let's look at some examples about how we calculate income. Sarah works at American Eagle. She makes $9.40 an hour and works 3 days a week. And each of her shifts is 6 hours long. What's her gross pay? So first we have to figure out her total number of hours. So her hours is 3 times 6, which is 18 hours. And basically, those 18 hours times that hourly wage will tell us her gross pay. So here we have her hours times her wage, her hourly rate, and then that equals her gross pay. Okay, that's a pretty simple one. It's pretty straightforward. Those of you who have part-time jobs, you're probably used to how you calculate that gross pay, and you know that there's going to be deductions like taxes and EI and things like that taken off as well. Now, during the summer, Sarah decides to continue working there. She will be working more hours. She's paid overtime for all hours worked over 8 hours in a daily shift. The overtime rate is time and a half. So, if Sarah's work schedule is as follows, calculate her gross pay. So, for the first day, she worked 8 hours. So, it'll be 8 times 9.40, which is equal to 75.20. She did not work any overtime because she only worked 8 hours. So no overtime. So she got 75.20 for that first day. Now day 2, she worked 9 hours, which is 8 plus 1. So the first 8 are at her regular rate, and that 1 hour is at the overtime rate, which is time and a half. So we times it by 1.5 times the 9.40, which equals 14.10. So her total pay for this day would be the 75.20 plus the 14.10, which is equal to 89.30. For the day 3, she worked 11 hours, which is 8 plus 3. So the first 8 hours is at her standard rate, so she gets 75.20 for that. But those other 3 are at overtime rate, time and a half. So we times the hourly rate times 1.5, which is 42.30. So her total pay for that day is the 75.20 plus the 42.30, which is equal to 117.50. Okay. Now we want to figure out her gross pay. We basically have to take each of these total pays and add them up. So her gross pay will be 75.20 plus 89.30 plus 117.50, which equals 282 even. Okay, so that would be her gross pay. Alrighty, now let's do a few more different examples, and then you can practice figuring out how much money people are making. Let's look at Heidi. Heidi is a hairdresser. She makes $14.25 an hour. You can tell this book is a little old because our minimum wage is more than that. And she works 40 hours each week. Overtime is paid for time worked over 40 hours, and she's paid time and a half for overtime. She also keeps 80% of her tips. Now, last week, Heidi worked 47 hours, and her tips were $72. What was her gross pay? So let's look. Her hourly rate, $14.25 per hour, and she worked 47 hours. Okay, so that means she worked 40 plus the 7 overtime, right? So for regular pay, she gets 40 times $14.25, which is equal to $570. Her overtime pay is those 7 times 1.5, because she gets time and a half, times $14.25. So she got $149.63 for those 7 hours. Her total tips, well, she keeps 80% of her tips, so you change the percent to decimal, 0.80 times $72, and we get $57.60. Now, gross pay. For the gross pay, we're going to add up this one, and this one. So her gross pay will be $570 plus $149.63 plus $57.60. We're going to add those up, and we get $777.23. Okay? Alrighty. Now, last example. This one's dealing with commission. Martin works at an electronics store, makes $10.50 an hour, and works 40 hours per week. He also gets a 4% commission. Now, his sales totaled $1,200 for a particular week. What's his gross income? So first, his regular pay is 40 times his hourly rate, which is $420. When you multiply those. Now his commission, you have to change your percent to decimal, so 0.04 times the 1,200 equals $48. Put my dollar sign there. And his gross income, well, we add up those two amounts to get his gross commission. So it's going to be 420, oops, I missed a 0, so plus 48 equals $468. Okay, so that's that first lesson. And it's income. Now you're going to do some practice where you're going to look at different circumstances and situations, and you're going to figure out how much money each of those people are going to be earning. There's an answer key to check your work, so have at her.